Hey everybody, welcome to the Herd Fit Podcast with Dr. Sam Marie and myself, Coach David Syvertson. This podcast is aimed at helping anyone and everyone looking to enhance their healthy lifestyle through fitness, nutrition, and most importantly, mindset.
All right, welcome back to the Herd Fit Podcast. I am Coach David Syvertson. I'm here by myself, kinda. This is a first in Herd Fit Podcast history. I have my 4-year-old son. Brock, wave to the camera. He's actually mid-race right now, so he's a little preoccupied. Trying to jam this in on a Thursday. It's my days where I usually don't coach for the most part, and I spend my Thursdays with him, but he's usually at the gym with me in the morning and throughout the day. We run a bunch of errands, do some gym classes, but today we were actually for the first time going to try to record a podcast together. I wouldn't expect much out of him today. He's a little camera shy, but we might get an update on what place he comes in every single race that he's going to be partaking in the next half hour. So if you hear a little kid in the background, if you're not watching this on YouTube, do not be alarmed. It is just my son, Brock, and future coach at CrossFit Bison. So today I am flying solo, and I want to talk a little bit about progressions. I think it's really important for all to know about progressions, where you stand with them, what do you think about them in relation to your own fitness journey. And the progressions, I want to kind of just dumb this down, and then I'll get a little bit more specific later on. Progressions are basically elements within programming that build off each other day to day, week to week, month to month, even in some cases year to year if you stick to it that long. I think any fitness program that has any ounce of quality has some sort of progress in mind for the athletes and the coaches and the environment, and they are a little bit more specific when the program is individualized. All right, individualized programming is a growing market in the past 10 years. Since I became an affiliate owner, a CrossFit affiliate owner, there is a divide between, hey, should athletes be partaking in template programming or should they have their own individual coach? We've actually done an episode on this whole OPEX model, which is individualized, versus a CrossFit model, which is really for a group. And which is better, which is worse, how much should this cost, how much should that cost? I don't want to really break it down that way, but I want to say within both programs, there should be some sort of progress that we are all pursuing. What kind of progress? I will get to that. But I will say this, when you're comparing individual and group programming, template programming is what we would call it, there should be some progressions within that program. All right, here at CrossFit Bison, for example, we usually have 1 or 2, maybe 3 things that we're really trying to progress in a block of anywhere from 4 to 6 to 8 to, in some cases, 12 weeks. For example, right now, and I will give more color on this later, we did a time trial row progression, 500, then 1,000, then 2,000. And we are also inched up our volume back squats. We did 8s, we did 12s, we did 15s. We capped it at 20 this past week. And we have a Bison benchmark workout right now that we're all pursuing, or most of us, with dumbbell step-ups, toes to bar, and clean and jerks. All right. So within all of this programming that is template, if you think about it, it's a group program that all walks of fitness are taking on, and we scale accordingly. Even within that program, we're trying to inch up, whether it be intensity of volume, loads, and time. And because at the end of the day, CrossFit programming, we are a very classic CrossFit program here. We do pursue performance for those that want to pursue performance. And pursuing performance, there needs to be some sort of progression that you're working towards. On an individual basis, and I've had an individual coach on multiple occasions when I was competing or trying to compete at a high level, and I was paying for my own individual coach, my own individual program, and within that program, every single session was a progression from a previous session. There was never like a random workout, quote random. Here at Bison, for group programming, we do have those focuses, but the workouts around them, aka I would even say the majority of the workouts, it's for GPP, general physical preparedness. We're just trying to work out. We're not trying to measure every little thing you do compared to last week and the week before. I think there's psychological damage to athletes if that is the daily quest that the programmer is implementing into the gym. So I want to say with progressions, with individual programs, they're a little bit more specific, and that's why they cost so much money. I mean, the most high-end individual programs are between $300 and $400 per month, and that's not including your gym membership. It's just that program. Where a lot of group programming, a lot of class-based programming can be somewhere between $75 and $100 a month. Some are even cheaper. We think about Mayhem and Proven that an affiliate takes on. It's even cheaper than that. So, and because it's not individualized to the athletes themselves, okay? It's less time to build that because you're not looking at every little result of an individual and now creating work and progressions off of those numbers. So that's the difference between template/group and individual progression. Now, what is progression, right? Well, let's look at the first part of the word, progress, right? I want to get better. I want to build. I want to enhance. I want to take a step up the ladder, okay? That discussion, your progress within a fitness program can go in so many different directions. Some of you have one or two of these. Some of you just have one. Some of you don't even know. One of them is performance. All right, this is kind of like the obvious, right? I want to get stronger. I want to get faster. I want to get. I want my capacity to increase, right? And that is a very common goal within CrossFit, within the CrossFit realm. Others, which is probably more common in just the world, it's aesthetics. You want to look better. How to define looking better will vary from person to person. But that is a big goal. That is a progression. That is a sign of progress that many people want. Whether you consider that vain or not, it's the absolute truth. I think I would actually venture to say that every single person that exercises on a routine basis and is following a program, do not buy any more games on that. All right, no buying games. Sorry, my son bought about $80 worth of games on his iPad last week, right? Did you? Yeah, you did. All right, don't do that again. Sorry to get off track there. But I would venture to say every single person that follows a program that works out consistently does have some sort of aesthetic goal. They want to look a certain way. Some are very extreme with it. Some are not. But I do think if you really get down to the bones of why people work out, aesthetics are part of it. So you want progress within your aesthetics. You want to look a certain way. That's a big reason why people will follow a program. You can get really specific with progress. Some are, they want a number to tell them that they're getting better. Losing weight, body fat percentage dropping, muscle mass increasing. Those are numbers with this InBody scanner that I have in the room behind me that can really show you progress within your program. Are you doing? Now, there's other factors beyond programming, but again, progress within any sort of fitness regimen, there needs to be a nutrition component. And that's where that really kind of blends into that kind of goal. I am looking for progress in those metrics so I can really put some value in terms of what I'm doing. That's my progress. That's my gauge, my weight, my body fat, my muscle mass, all that. That you can find objective numbers to tell you whether or not what you're doing is working. And honestly, I think there's also a little bit of this next one in everyone. There is a mental and psychological and discipline component of progressions. Right? You have a lot of people when they start a program, they don't have the discipline by themselves to just go and work out on their own and work out in the garage, go to a gym and work out. They need some help with that component of coming in and being motivated and staying disciplined and staying mentally in it because fitness truly is 24/7, 365. I'm not saying it needs to be a perfect approach 24/7, 365, but there is some voice in your head that needs to tell you like, hey, I am pursuing health. I am pursuing performance. Because if that switch turns on and off, like you sleep and wake up every single day, if that goal is inconsistent, there's no point in viewing anything as progression because you're just constantly going 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 3 steps back. So I do think that when people sign up for a program or they start a new program or they want to join a gym that has a program or they find a random program somewhere, there is a mental and psychological component with when it comes to progressions. You're trying to become more disciplined. You're trying to put a little bit more into this quest of yours. And those are the kinds of progress that I see within progressions of any sort of fitness program. To sum that up, their performance, aesthetics, objective measurements, and then the mental/discipline/psychological component to your progress. Now, one thing that's really important, why I think this is really important for both coaches/programmers and athletes, the coach and programmer, you need to know you're never going to come up with the perfect program for everyone. I don't think it's possible because everyone has different goals. They have different physiological needs and demands and issues that can leave them short or really push them past your progressions. Some of them like what you do, some of them don't. That's something that I think every coach and programmer needs to stay very humble with. Your job is not to come up with the perfect solution for everyone. Athletes, I think your number one priority here when you want to talk about progressions, you can't constantly move the target. Example, if you want to get as strong as possible and you put everything you have into it for a month, but then all of a sudden you're like, dude, my conditioning's disappearing. I'm putting some weight on. I'm actually putting some body fat on while doing this. I'm out. I want to go back to cutting carbs, eating in a deficit, doing as much cardio as possible, vice versa. If you want to get your engine better, if you're looking at endurance and conditioning, like, man, I really just can't get through these 10-minute workouts anymore. I can't run a mile anymore. I really want to put myself into that. I'm going to start doing a running program 3 days a week and doing all this extra cardio. Your strength is going to start to go down at some point, most likely, right? Everyone's different, but more often than not, almost always, if you're putting all that effort and energy into your endurance and conditioning, you are going to get weaker. You might lose some muscle mass. So if you hate that feeling after a month and then all of a sudden you go to another program or you're chasing a different progression, you're just going to go back into this yo-yo back and forth hamster wheel of never really pushing yourself to an actual level of progression where you can actually look back on something and, wow, I got better. So the question is, what's the timeline? How long should you be pursuing a progression and that can really be long lasting? And I think the number is a minimum of 2 to 3 months. And that's a struggle point because we're all motivated when we start something. I see it here all the time. Someone signs up for a competition. They can't wait to train for it. They do a great job for 2 to 3 weeks. And then, bam, something happens. They overtrain and get injured. They have social things that come up that prevent them from living the lifestyle of an athlete and pursuing their goals. They simply get bored of the repetition. And again, progressions require repetition, meaning doing things over and over again. They get bored. And CrossFitters, to a fault, with the world I pretty much live in, part of the draw to it is the variety. You're constantly doing different things. You like doing different things. It kind of keeps you guessing and kind of stimulates you every now and then. But if that is a bottom of the pyramid for you, meaning you need that to be happy, you need that to be disciplined, you need that to be motivated, your progressions are going to be very limited because a real progression is a step by step by step. It's not a 3-step process. If you want a number, it's a 30-step process. If you get to steps 1 through 8, motivated and happy, and then you start to peter off a little bit at step 9. You never really reach step 15, and then at the set of 15, it starts to get a little bit harder. All right, now I'm going to move on to something else. Here's a real-life example, okay, that I see all the time. I would say actually with every single CrossFitter that has done this for more than a few years, okay? The most progress you see is in your first year. Okay, so let's say your progress is 0 to 100. You will probably get 0 to 50 in that first year. Okay? The next 50, 51 to 100 will take you the next 4 years. And that's because it's new. That's because there's a lot of thinking that goes into starting CrossFit. And once you get past the thinking stage and you just start moving, your power output increases, your intensity, another way of saying that, increases. And a lot of people, when they get from 0 to 50, they're like, wow, I'm so used to this rate of progress, this rate of progressions. Okay, now my next rate of progressions is going to take 4 times as long. And even though you're making progress, it's just a slower scale. You get to this point where you're like, man, this isn't working. I need to try something else. You start over, you go back to a new way of working out, you start a new program, you make all this progress in that first year again, peter out again because the progress is not as fast. It's a very steep climb in progress in a good way at the start. And then eventually it starts to straighten out. it's still a good thing, but it feels like you have to work twice as hard to make the same gains as you did previously. And that burns out a lot of candles. If you want a more objective example to that, let's say someone comes in for the first time at Bison, they row a 500 meters and it takes them 2 minutes. We work on their rowing technique. We work on their conditioning a little bit. We just get them thinking like, hey, this is not a hard movement, right? Just do a couple little things right and pull really hard. Let's say a month later, they're pulling a 140. So they made a 20-second progress on that second attempt. Let's say we spend the next 4 months, so twice as long, working on row techniques and intervals, and you're putting yourself through a lot of painful workouts. If you've ever done serious row intervals, they hurt a lot in a lot of different ways. So let's say we double the amount of time, we double the amount of work that you do, and you don't make another 20-second jump, you make a 5-second jump. You're now rowing a 135. That right there is progress. That right there is building progressions into a program. But psychologically, if you're not aware of the fact that you're not going to be making these steep climbs in progress every single time you retest, you're going to look at that and be like, ooh, maybe I'm peaking, or I'm plateauing. That's the word I was looking for. That's a common word in fitness, right? I've hit a plateau, and more often than not, it's garbage. It's not true that you've hit a plateau. Your progress is just taking a lot longer, and the next steps, remember, go back to that 0 to 100 scale. Those next steps are not going to require you just showing up. There's going to be other factors, lifestyle factors, that are going to enable you to even reach that 100 progress scale. So that's something that athletes really need to pay attention to when you're chasing after progressions. Okay, so I'll give you a few examples. You can view this from a coach perspective, athlete perspective. Here at Bison, we did a row progression where we tested a 500-meter row, very painful, right? 1,000-meter row, also very painful. And then the next week, we did a 2,000-meter row. And in between those efforts, all right, I did a little bit of a Excel spreadsheet work where basically I would write that. You would find your time on that spreadsheet, all right, all the way on the left side of the column. You'd eventually scroll down till you find your time, and then I would give you 10 to 20% increase of that time, and those are the paces that you're going to try to hit when you row 1,000, because you can't row the same pace for 1,000 that you did 500. All right, there's something called Paul's law that centers around the number 8 seconds per 500 that you do, but I don't like that because a 500-meter row adding 8 seconds from 2 minutes is very different than someone adding 8 seconds from 1:20. So I don't like that number. I like to think percentages. This is how I view progressions within programming. And so we tested the 1,000 meter the next week, and you now had a number to shoot after. Okay. The next number was 2,000. So we doubled it again. And I did the same exact thing. This was 5 to 15% because now we're getting a little bit more aerobic instead of anaerobic. So that's why the percentages are a little bit different, and those numbers will continue to shrink as we go into deeper, longer rows because you're just using a completely different energy system. But that was a progression that we did, 500, 1,000, 2,000, and just to kind of see where is your row capacity, but it also gives you information. This is what I want you to pay attention to. You now have information on what you can row in that 1 to 2 minute workout stage. A lot of that can be applicable to interval workouts because most workouts are never going to be 2 minutes. So your 500-meter row time, you should pretty much never see it on a rower unless it says, hey, you need to sprint. 1,000-meter row, now you're starting to get to the area where you could start approaching, 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 minute workouts, and you're ever on a rower. You can get that pace off that time that you have. That's something that you can build progressions into. That, hey, I rode an average of a 144 on my 1,000-meter row. I should probably never be below 140 or never above 155 in workouts that are anywhere from 3 to 6 minutes with that row, unless there's other specific instructions, which usually there are not. The 2,000-meter row time is probably the one I think everyone should pay attention to, because in most cases, that's between 7 and 10 minutes for most people. The average workout in CrossFit is probably around that, if not a little bit longer. So again, I can give you your 2,000 meter, your 500 meter splits, that number that you always see on that monitor. That should give you a really good idea that if I want to progress on the rower, you can't just come in on the next 2K row and just say, hey, I'm going to try harder. Maybe it'll work. In most cases, it won't. If it does, it's going to be a very small jump. But if you're going to test that, sorry if you hear a video in the background, that's Brocky. I'm trying to turn the microwave phone away from it. If you're going to try to row anything in a workout that is 7 to 12 minutes, you now have a number in which you can progress to. Now, if you want to beat that 2K row next time, you need to have that pace in your head. And for most workouts, you want to be that or faster. You want to train yourself to row at that pace. You want to pay attention to your strokes per minute, which is how many times you're repping out the pole. And now you have a number to shoot after, okay? So we just, similar thing that we did with the back squats. We every Thanksgiving, we have a tradition here that we do 100 back squats at our body weight the day before Turkey Day. And instead of us just throwing them into the fire, we built up squat capacity. All right, we did sets of 8, we did sets of 12, we did sets of 15, we did sets of 20. And we weren't going for max sets. On the 20s, we told them to push a little bit, but we didn't really want max sets prior to. We just want your body to start acclimating and progressing towards, hey, I can squat 8 times in a row. Mostly the back squat is for a strength gain. So it's usually our reps ranges are from 1 to 5, right? This is now going for more capacity and muscle building. And instead of us starting at 20, we built them up. And it's kind of progressing your body to being able to squat that many times in a row. And for the guys that are really overachievers and really pursuing performance, I told them to try to hit the same weights. Hit the same weight for 15 that you did 12. That's a progression. Hit the same weight for 20 that you did 15. That's a progression because you're simply doing more work in that working set. Now, what happens if I skip a day? This is where group training and not being individualized and not really having full control of the room with the athletes and their schedules and their motivation levels, that it's hard for us to really progress the entire room at once, not knowing what days they take on, what days they take off. But if you are a progression athlete and you know that your gym is working on volume squats, because we disclose that in emails at the whiteboard, this is where it needs to be on the athlete to make that a priority. If it's a huge priority for you, you might even want to say, I need to take a day off before that squat day, or I need to kind of dial back my intensity on the, quote, random deadlift burpee workout the day before so I don't come in feeling ruined for my squats. And again, that's where the individual and group comes in. That's where the individual athlete's responsibility here needs to have at least some way in of what you're actually going to be approaching this with. I'll give you a personal example. I actually am 2 days away from my first ever High Rocks race. I'm doing it with my brother in Texas in 2 days, flying out tonight. Really looking forward to it for a lot of reasons. But I don't have a huge running background. I would actually say I don't even have a small running background. The last time I would consider myself a runner, I was probably 20 to 22 years old. So over 10 years ago is when I would actually say I was a good runner. I do enjoy it. I'm just not good at it. And these High Rocks runs are 1,000 meters at a time with a lot of some hard work in between the runs. There's 8 of them. I can't tell you the last time I ran at 8,000 meters. I really can't. And it would be foolish of me to not try to train with some sort of progression in my mind. I could probably grind through it, but it would not be safe. It would not be enjoyable. And I'm someone that, even though I'll never be the best at High Rocks ever, I'm going to try to be. I'm going to be my best. And that motivates me and fuels me in a lot of different ways. But I progressed my way to this race over the past 2-3 months. I didn't do a lot of training for it. I wish I could have done more. But pretty much every Sunday, I came in and started off with all these workstations. And before each one of them was a 400-meter run. Next week, 500. Next week, 800. Next week, 1,000 for a half, 800 for a half. Next week, a bunch of thousands. And again, there's different ways to progress that. That's a pretty basic element. But there was a progression mindset within that run because every week I was trying to enhance what I did the week before. And again, that is a really dumbed down way of saying there's progression with that form of programming to properly fuel me mentally, physically, emotionally, everything, be getting ready for a big race on Saturday, okay? I do believe in adrenaline. I do believe that, hey, game day shows up, I should be ready to rock no matter what. But to ignore the training prior to, it simply just puts a severe limit cap on your potential for that event, okay? So, going to wrap this up soon. All right, Brock's being great. Good job, buddy. Okay. And do you want to say anything to the camera or no? Before I get into what do you want to say? Okay, what do you want to say? Hi. You want to say? You want to say 3, 2, 1, go? Okay, ready?
3, 2, 1, go!
3, 2, 1, go. All right. We do the same thing when we go potty at home. It's awesome. All right, it's cool. So prioritize. What should you prioritize if you want more of a progression mindset? Okay. Here at Bison, I don't squat every Monday. We didn't row every Thursday. We switched it up, and I do think there's positive and negatives behind that. I do that because I can't plan around everyone else's schedule, and I also know that there's some people that can never get here Monday. They can never get here on Wednesday. They can never get here on Friday. They work out hard Monday through Thursday, and I don't want to get into too much of a routine because I do think classic CrossFit programming, which is what I really want to be a foundation here, is that you should be prepared for any task that is thrown at you any day of the week. That's the whole, that's one of the mantras of functional fitness. You don't always get to choose when you have to use your fitness in a life-changing situation, right? And that you can't always have things lined up for you. If you're on the sports side, you can kind of curtail things a little bit, but I do believe in switching what days up we squat and row. I always have. But if you want to prioritize your progressions with your squats, with your row, with your benchmark, with your high rocks, that needs to be the first thing you figure out. You can't wake up on a Monday morning and be like, nope, I just want to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week. It has to be nope, we're squatting Thursday. I'm taking off Wednesday, that means. All right, we're doing our row on Friday. That means I'm going to taper on Wednesday, Thursday, leading into Friday. If you truly want those progressions, that needs to be a focus, right? I have felt even guilty and sometimes where we redo a benchmark workout or we redo some sort of fitness test and someone didn't get better. I always, as a coach, feel responsible for that. And whether I'm responsible or not, or it's partially responsible or not, I'm always going to have some sort of weight on my shoulders with that. But I want to say that as an athlete as well that has not made progress in certain things, you have to kind of dial into what you're doing lifestyle-wise, but also just your simple routine. Again, if you really want to get your strict press higher and you come in the day before to a workout and do 170 push-ups and handstand push-ups, you're not going to get your strict press higher. You'll feel like your muscles are burning, but you're not going to get stronger. So I do feel like you need to prioritize your routine so that you're at the fullest possible strength prior to taking on the next step of that progression. Okay. Now, does this work? This is something we need to reflect on, coaches and athletes. All right. Don't just leave this on the athletes. Coaches, if your progressions are not working, need to be humble about that and try to go back to the drawing board. And I do think it helps for you to be involved in this or have some sort of history with it. Not all coaches need to have an athletic background, whether we're talking about CrossFit or the NFL, right? Some of the best coaches in the NFL, some of the best coaches in the CrossFit space have never been elite athletes. But they have some sort of personal experience as an athlete that they can look back on that hopefully they can kind of input into their actual programming. I do think those are the best coaches. They take their own personal experience and they're able to project forward to the future experiences. But I do think you need to reflect on if something is working or not. If it's not working, before we point fingers at a program, at a coach, a training partner, look inward first. And this is not a defense of coaches. I just believe this is how we should all be in anything we do. Can you look inward and say, did I follow this routine that I just talked about? Was I at full strength at these progression workouts? How am I sleeping? What is my nutrition like? What is my alcohol intake like? What is my stress management like? These are all factors that I think lead to lack of progress more than any workout program out there. There are awful workout programs out there. There absolutely are, but I don't think they should be the first thing you look at. I think there has to be other factors, like I just said, that are probably going to halt your progress, your progressions more than anything. When should you try something different? This is something that we're all going to come across at some point, whether it's a competitor program. I know athletes that have been in 5 different, they did Proven, they did Mayhem, they did Invictus, right? They did CrossFit, they did F45, they did Orange Theory. They found a random program online. When should you try it? I'm not going to be able to answer that question for you. I want to answer this question. When you take something on, I think it has to be a 2 to 3 month all-in commitment. if you're half-assed with the commitment for 2 to 3 months, you're not going to know if it worked or not. You're just not. You have to, if you are going to start, and I know it's exciting to start something new. I've been there before too. It's exciting. It really is. But once you hit that first snag, whether it's 2, 3, 4 weeks in, I see it with Reset every year. Everyone's pumped for Reset for 2, 3 weeks, and then bam, February hits. I'm like, oh my God, that was so long. It wasn't even 3, 4 weeks. So you have to be able to program your mind to think long-term with it. Because I do think a real substantial change that's actually going to change how you move, how you look, how you feel is a 2 to 3 month window. And I'll be honest with you, that's the minimum. And you can't be short-term greedy with it. I do know people that make progress within 2 weeks. But again, I think, is that real physical progress, or are you just happier? It's new. It's exciting. I feel great all the time. So that's it on my progression talk, guys. I hope something got to your head in terms of how do you view progression. You get to choose how you do that. And coaches at the same time know that progressions, they're really hard to pursue with a lot of people at once, but you should be intentional in at least some ways, even in CrossFit, to try to build something. It could be strength, could be conditioning, could be mixed modal, could be muscle capacity, could be skills, right? Could be lifestyle. I think lifestyle gets overlooked way too easily. But I want you guys to have that sort of approach when you program anything, individual, group, or template. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week. Brock, anything in closing?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Herd Fit podcast. Be on the lookout for next week's episode.